You know, they just keep coming. Drip, drip, drip. New disclosures in the so-called Bridgegate scandal. Of course, that's the George Washington Bridge scandal. And the key question is still, was New Jersey Governor Chris Christie involved in closing some of those access lanes to the bridge last year to paralyze the town of Fort Lee? Just this morning, the New York Star-Ledger's editorial page editor weighed in with the big headline, "We blew it." They're expressing regret for endorsing the governor last year. Meanwhile, reporters are still digging for new scoops. And here's the latest one. The mayor of Fort Lee now says he believes the lanes were closed in retaliation for his endorsement of Christie's Democratic rival in the governor's race. Up until now, he's been a little skittish about saying that. But now he says, although he was not directly asked to endorse the governor, he was showered with political favors from the Christie campaign right up until the day that he endorsed Democrat Barbara Bono. The governor, of course, has denied having knowledge of the lane closures while they were happening. So the question is this: at what point does this become big enough to sink Chris Christie as a 2016 presidential contender? Or has it already? I can't think of anyone better to ask than my next guest, Carl Bernstein, one half of the legendary Woodward and Bernstein team that broke the Watergate story, leading to the resignation of President Nixon. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to
Now,
be
of course,
with you.
there's always differences with every scandal, but do you see similarities in the way that news has slowly trickled out about Bridgegate and the way slowly news trickled out about Watergate?
Let's start with Bridgegate. It's a terrible term. It's unfair to Governor Christie, and we in the media ought to abandon that term right away.
No more gates at all, huh?
First of all, it trivializes Watergate by calling everything gate, but in the case of Christie, it's just plain unfair. We don't know all the facts yet. Let's wait till the facts are in. The New Jersey legislature needs to do a really important bipartisan investigation, such as was undertaken in Watergate, and we'll learn more. What we have here is a huge national story on many levels, not the least of which is that it has thrown the Republican presidential sweepstakes wide open. Christie was the presumed nominee among the commentating class and many others. He no longer is, under any circumstances. This means there's going to be a huge fight for the presidential nomination in the Republican Party. Other candidates are going to enter, maybe even people like Joe Scarborough, Rob Portman, many others. This is now wide open.
And you think Christie, Scarborough would actually do it? He always flirts with this stuff. You think he'd actually run for president?
I can't be inside his head. I think, though, that he certainly would think about it, and that if he saw that there was a way and a path, that was a possibility, that he probably would.
And your point is that now there are these paths opening up.
This can go anywhere.
Right.
Christie was the ideal candidate, moving to the center, somebody who supposedly could work with Democrats, who had gotten a lot accomplished in his state, very popular, so-called truth teller who got right out there and says things that others are afraid to say. And now what we have is an implosion of sorts.
It sounds like you don't think he's too thoroughly damaged to be the nominee. That we don't know yet.
I think it's unlikely that he will be the nominee. If he's going to be the nominee, he has to prove that this was all invented against him, that he really had very little to do with the aura of his office that made this possible. It was his top aides, regardless of whether he said close down the damn lanes, his people closest to him did it. And they did it in a cynical, horrible way that endangered people's lives. This is no prank, as Rudy Giuliani has put it, claimed. This is a terrible offense against the citizens and endangering them of his state. So unless he can show that he has somehow been ambushed by the press, had nothing to do with this, that his assistants were independent operators who kept things from him. It's a pretty rough thing to accept for most people. I think that he's that far removed, and if he's then shown to be that far removed that he didn't know what the hell was going on in his office, then that's another problem. We have no idea what's going to happen in an investigation. You know, he might have to worry about being the governor of New Jersey. We just don't know.
Here's a Twitter message I got from a viewer when I said we were going to be on with me today. They wrote, "Without more proof than we now have, is this whole Chris Christie thing starting to feel like press overkill?"
No, because we need to know what happened, and we have very little evidence, hard evidence so far that has been made public. The governor's office has failed to make it public. There are many subpoenas out there that the governor could open up his books if he wanted to say this is invented by the press. I'll give you everything we're giving to the investigating committees. Here it is. Come on in, reporters. Come on in, everybody.
Reporter's dream.
I haven't seen that kind of willingness to open up. The idea, look, just like in Watergate, there are those who are going to say, let's make the conduct of the press the issue here, not the conduct of the governor and his office.
It's not always the world's most boring story, making the press the story instead of the...
No, it works. It worked in Watergate for a good while. If you remember, we were kind of out there by ourselves. Nixon tried to make the conduct of the Washington Post the issue in Watergate, not his and not those of his assistants. At a certain point, it stops working if the facts are compelling enough and if the reporting is good enough. So far, the facts are compelling and the reporting is pretty good.
It's pretty good. We're about to talk in the next block about Hillary Clinton and, the presumed candidate for 2016, and how Rand Paul has been criticizing her husband, even calling Bill Clinton a sexual predator. Do you think that's a fair line of attack that we're hearing in all of his interviews Rand Paul's been doing?
I've written, I guess, the standard biography, A Woman in Charge of Hillary Clinton. Came out as she was running for president the last time. Look, there was something of a co-presidency in the Clinton years, and if she were to be president, it would be another co-presidency in some ways. So Bill Clinton's actions, it seems to me, are perfectly fair game, particularly that his principal defender, including his legal defense, his defense in impeachment, was his wife, Hillary Clinton. So it's fair game. At the same time, we ought to remember that Clinton, is about the most popular political figure in this country today for all kinds of interesting reasons. I'm not one, incidentally, based a little bit on what I'm hearing and a little bit of instinctual notions. I'm not convinced she's going to run for president. I think the Christie thing might have made it more likely, but she's looking at every aspect of this, including her health, her husband's health. They both have to be healthy. If she's going to undertake this run, she's not going to undertake a run if it looks to the Clintons as if there's a real big chance that she could be beaten. So it's not a sure thing she's running. And people I know who know her well, and there are very few who she talks to about this question, if any beside her husband, in terms of what she's really going to do. But there are some doubts among those who know her well that she's really going to do this, and she's not going to make a decision until we get much closer to the event.
Yes, it is only February 2014. Carl, thank you so much for being here. Thank you.